Hello YouTube! Do you remember this car? I built this one, I put a turbo on this one last year, and it was a really cheap build. And I didn't get it work all right, but that's good YouTube content. If things works out straight away, it's not fun at all. So now there's half springtime here in Sweden, so we are going to fix some of the last year's problems. So I spent maybe 600-700 euros on some parts for this one. So I bought a new intercooler here. It's from Garrett. Quite expensive, I must say. I could buy a cheaper one with tanks on the side, but since I made a very special routing of the pipes on this one before, because I shipped out on a real intercooler, I have to make my own tanks on the side and inlets and outlets because they don't align anymore. So that cost me more money than just buying the Chinese one from the get-go. I also noticed that the radiator was blown when I tested it last year. So I got a new aluminium radiator from DO88, some Swedish company, and a lot of you guys commented, a few of you, I don't get that many comments on YouTube, that it might go a little bit lean on the gasoline to air ratio. I was pretty sure it had something to do with the ignition, but the more I thought about it, the more, yeah, kind of makes sense. So I bought a wideband lambda sensor from Innovate that we are going to mount on this one. So we got intercooler, radiator and wideband lambda, and I also have to fix the oil leak on it. I can't drive it like it is now because it's not good for the environment. It's leaking way too much oil from the return line from the turbo, and to make that work I have to take out the engine, and when I take out the engine I might look at other few things. I got one broken bolt on the exhaust side on the engine, so maybe I can fix that one. If I can't, I just let it be. I can buy another head instead, but I'm going to try to fix that one while I'm at it. But first off, let's fix the intercooler and then just yank everything off so I can yank out the engine. So let's get at it. what you see me doing here is just a test fit and to get to drill the holes to holding everything down. As you remember, I am going to yank the engine out, so as I said, yes, this is just a test fit to see that everything works out. And here comes my trusty old wheel loader, or at least the front end, the forks. Those forks are 2 meters long, and the whole rack in front is 2 meters wide too. And they were quite expensive. I think I paid like 2,000 euros, 20,000, and it's a no-name brand, but still, they are manufactured to withstand, and being what I'm doing, I didn't want any old, maybe cracked, so I spring for brand new forks, so yeah, safety reasons too, but they have really served me well. It was I don't regret paying that money to get them. They have saved my back, and they have saved me a lot of work too, so that was a good investment. As I said in the beginning, one of the, I don't know, pin bolts that's holding down the exhaust manifold here was broken off, and I tried to drill it out, but as I drilled I remembered, I think I broke off a tip of Torx inside of there, and that's hardened, so the drills would never bite. So this is the second best thing you can do, and it's a piece of copper that I drilled out. I think I drilled it out 8.5 millimeters, and then you just weld down the hole, and the copper, it conducts the electricity from welding and everything, but since it's copper, it doesn't stick. So the metal wire from the MIG doesn't stick to the copper. So therefore I can just build it up. Because of the thickness of the copper, I think it was like 10 or 12 mil, I can drill out as I go. So we'll see here. Now I have it a little bit up here, and I just weld it in. So then I ideally I shouldn't need use the pliers on this one, but then pick it up and weld it, and pick it up and weld it, and I lift it a little bit each time. And soon enough I have built up a new thread and everything. So I did thread this one M8 later on, but I didn't get that on camera. I'm off to take off the oil sump. I did put in an oil return on this first video, and I did it with the oil pan in the car, and the weld was actually pretty good when I took it all apart and looked at it, but still it was leaking way too much oil. Somewhere I didn't get it right, so I took this off and took it to the workbench and refitted one. See here, here I refitted it with a 90-degree elbow and TIG welded it from the inside to make sure. And I noticed one other biggie when I took this apart. If you look closer here, yeah, you can see it. Look at the bearing caps. Number 1, number 3, number 2. They are all wrong. I think maybe the back one. No, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, the back one, the backest one is right. And it's so weird because the engine was working really fine and everything. So I can't imagine that they have put it all together wrong at the factory. So someone have to take this one apart and messed up that. Yeah, I was so surprised. But I didn't change it or anything. This engine is if it goes wrong, I just got another one. So I didn't mind, but I was very surprised that someone have taken this one apart before me. mounting this engine into the engine bay, looking at it like this, it looks fairly simple, but man, did I ever struggle to get this one in. The engine was tilting. I have been out with this engine twice before, but both of those are more than 10 years ago, and I didn't even have this nice equipment, the forks and the wheel loader and everything, and still made it. And I don't understand how, because it was so terrible to get it in. I had to get the engine mounts off and mount them to the frame before I could mount the bolts in, and the bolts, some of the bolts I had to have in place a little bit because they were too long otherwise. So lowering the engine down without stripping the bolts that were sticking out through the engine mounts, and man, I think this was an hour's work just to get the engine in, and yeah, I don't know how I did it when I was younger. But here it is, mounted anyhow. It looks super easy on video. There, now I have fixed all those small things that takes forever to fix. Like 75% of the build all the parts I took shortcuts around. So now it's not leaking oil. I fixed the oil feed line with a steel line instead. You will see it a little bit further on. And I have mounted for a lambda sensor that we are going to fit next. But as I said, we are like back on square one. So all that work was just fixing all the bad stuff from last year. So just fixing the gauges, and then it's time for a test drive. This is a Bosch wideband sensor, lambda sensor. I think it's LSU 4.9, this version, and this should be good stuff. And you have the older narrow band, which are not as good, and this got preheat and everything. And here in the instrument cluster, I'm putting Innovate MTX-L lambda sensor gauge, and as far as I understand, this is just a small part of the investment, the gauge itself, because there is some kind of software in this one. So I got a 0 to 5 volt sensor out. So effectively, I should be able, if I want to in the future, buy a cheaper motor control and use this one 0 to 5 sensor out to that one, so I don't have to buy one with built-in wideband lambda sensor. So I future-proofed the car a little bit here. Out here that I have a GoPro aiming at the gauge to show you guys what lambda I got, but first off, it didn't record as usual. Always one of my GoPros never record when I do this kind of things. Secondly, the display updates, you can see it's rolling, so I couldn't get it on camera anyhow. So yeah, that's a bummer. So, what can I say? You guys were right, I was wrong. You saw on the wideband lambda I have, it calculates on AFR, air to fuel ratio, and I think, I'm not sure, but I think it's like lambda 1, if you go by the other measurement. Lambda 1 is the perfect stoichiometry. I think it's 14.1 amount of air to 1 amount of fuel, and the fuel is fluid here, and the air is, you don't know the density or anything. So I don't know exactly the calculation, but you saw when I drive, it's like always on the other side, it's almost 20 parts of air to 1 part of fuel. And I guess the turbo feeds this on a little more air than it's used to, and it can't keep up, or something else is wrong. Nevertheless, I thought it was the ignition, but I have to get to know the fuel system a little bit better, because that measurement can't be good. It's almost empty on fuel, so I'm going to fuel it up a little bit, and we are going to do a measurement on the pressure side on the fuel. But I have to warn you, it's don't try this at home test now, because the whole electricity system in this one it's crap right now. I can't even get the starter work properly, because all the cables are fried, so it cranks on by its own, and it can't stop crank when I start cranking. It's super annoying. So what you're going to see now is don't try this at home. Yeah, as I said, don't try this at home. I'm teeing off the high pressure side of the fuel, and I'm going to use a manometer and a hose between that are meant for measuring hydraulic pressure. And so effectively now I'm going to bring in a plastic hose into the cabin of the car with high pressure gasoline on it, and on the same side all the electronics on the engine side are fried. Almost every cable I move around the plastic just are so brittle that it falls off. So this is dangerous, but I did it for a short test drive, and then I just took it all off again. Yeah, there you could see it runs rather lean. It's bottoming out on the lean side when I get off the throttle pedal. I was lucky enough to find an old new fuel filter. It was from a Audi, I think. Some old Audi I had in the past that I never changed on, so that was lucky. So I mounted this one in, and we are going to see here. Yeah, I'm taking off the invention. Now look how brown the fuel was. So I think it's a lot of rust in the tank. So maybe that's something to address. But the fuel pressure was fine, about a little more than 5 bars, and that's what it should be on this system as far as I know. So the fuel pressure was okay and it didn't drop. Next up in the fault searching, I looked into the, I don't know the term, certainly don't know it in English. I'm going to call it an air sleeve. It's actuated by the electronics of the Coyotronic, and it bypasses air between the flap that calculates the amount of fuel that passing and straight back to the intake. And I think it's working like it's closed when the car is cold, and then all the air have to go to the fuel flap, so it enriches a little bit, and as soon as the car gets warmer, this air sleeve opens up and bypasses some air part from it. So when it's warm it should be open, and when it's cold it should be closed. But that's me guessing. So I didn't get any effect on the car, like fiddling around with this air sleeve. So here I am going to try to just block it off by pinching the air hose and see if that makes any difference. No, it doesn't. It doesn't seem to affect that much. So here, what's up next is I have a 3mm Allen key where you put it down in it's a pipe. It's between the fuel distributor and the flap that measures the amount of air that goes by. So you are altering this fuel plate a little bit with this Allen key by turning it, I think it's clockwise, you're adding fuel, and this actually worked. I am adding fuel, so I did get it to run much richer, but still on the upper part, you'll see it soon, I still didn't get it to, it runs better, but it wasn't all great anyhow. And now I'm grasping every straw on what I can find. I was thinking maybe the turbo boost is going way up, but I never see it because it's breaking up. The engine is breaking up at like after 3 grand. So why not lower the boost to some lower boost levels and see if that helps anything. And now here's the final part before I give up. I am going to take off the intake manifold here and take out the pressure regulator. I did measure it. You remember that fire hazard, don't try this at home thing I did before. So it was about a little bit more than 5 bars, and that should be okay. But just to be on the safe side, I am going to add a little bit more pressure by putting in shims on the fuel regulator, and it's mounted on top of the fuel distributor underneath here, and it's kind of hard to get to, so A minute ago I said that I was on the last straw on trying stuff, and I forgot this part. I did test drive and it was no difference at all. And this is the last test, a pretty redneck type of thing. We are going to test the fuel flow on the return line, how it's acting, and how much fuel on the return line I get when I'm on full load, when I'm out driving. So this is, as I said, very redneck. I don't think I will go any further than this for this episode of this YouTube video. You guys were right who mentioned it didn't get enough fuel, and I have richened it up now on, it's a 3mm Allen key. You can adjust the flap that in turn adjust the amount of fuel, and I turned that one up, and later on you saw me pick out a pressure regulator, the thing that's regulates the return flow, and I added like 0.5mm copper shim on that one, and that should equivalent to about a bit under 1 bar of system pressure, but I haven't checked if it does that. When I checked with a gauge before, I was slightly above 5 bars of boost, which I think is about right for this application, so I upped it a little bit more without checking it. But it still runs a little bit too lean on the top end, as you can hear, but it's way better. It's now it's kicks away, now it's moving like before, even a little bit more, about half a bar of boost, but as soon as I go up in the upper, it starts breaking up, but on its way to that upper it's speedy, much better. So I don't know, I do have a return flow all the time, even when it's under load, as you can see in the video, but that's not the whole story. I don't know if it's a pressure drop, big pressure drop, or a smaller one, but so it might be a good idea to check if the pumps, and even replacing. I have one pre-pump in the tank, gasoline tank, and I have one injection pump underneath the car, and just change them out, both of them, just to be on the safe side, maybe to something bigger. There might be other problems too, but that's what I can think about now. Maybe you can think about anything else on this Conjutronic I can do to make it deliver more fuel on the top end. So thanks for watching this YouTube video. You will see this car again, but maybe not the next video. I have other cars too, but it runs better now, so I'm more happy now. So thanks for watching. Bye bye.